Welcome back, everybody, to the team event here at Fort Wayne. We are playing in the NRG series. My name is Anurag Das, and I'm joined by Julian Kanab. If you're just joining us, we're diving into round 3 of this team event today. We've had a couple pretty exciting matches so far. Julian, any favorite moments of the games that we've watched today?
Dude, I want to say anytime I see breach going off, and the one of the I keep calling it the bobble, the spell bomb, just like doing so much work. I think that was definitely my favorite moment of the game, of the whole tournament thus far. Like the spell bomb making the entire game.
Yeah, I liked seeing a couple turn 0 or turn 1 dark rituals into Doomsdays. That was pretty good. Legacy will always tickle my heart and make me happy, but that was particularly brutal. And I think actually maybe my favorite part so far has been talking to the players in between rounds, just to see like how they think about certain games, matches, decks, and then just the event itself, right? This being a team event, you are sitting with friends, comrades, teammates, throughout the whole day. And just as a heads up, there are going to be 7 rounds of Swiss, followed by the entire top 8 being played today. That's right. So don't go anywhere. We're in for the long haul. We're going to go into round 3 shortly for our team event here. And the feature match for this round is going to be Modern, which is pretty exciting. We've watched a decent amount of Modern so far. We've seen Breach, we've seen Creativity. Those are pretty popular decks in the format. What else are you kind of interested in seeing in Modern? Any other decks that are exciting for you?
Dude, right now I'm actually most excited for seeing that one of the decks that are going to come up in Modern that we'll speak about in a moment. But I want to see more of maybe the Chuckmouth deck. I really like that one. From what I see, that's not gonna be in this round, because this round we're actually gonna see Mill in action, and that's a deck that I have played quite a lot of in Modern. One of my good friends, Kevin Dane, is playing that in Modern, and we stream it quite often, and we even like got a 4-1 in Legacy Leagues. We're still chasing that 5-0. But from
Aha.
everything I understand, for a long time, like Mill used to be like a real contender, then kind of like almost like fell off a cliff. But here it is back again, and dude, the allure of playing the 8 crabs and fetch lands to just like completely mill out your opponent much quicker than you would ever imagine.
Yeah.
I'm
All right.
actually
Well,
excited to see that one in action.
yeah, real contender. We'll find out right now. It looks like the players are seated. Let's dive right into the match here to find out, is Mill going to do it here? So we got 2 teams. Mill against Izzet Murktide is going to be the primary feature match here. Zane Martin on the left here playing Izzet Murktide, and then Daniel Wharton on the right playing Dimir Mill, with teammates Brandon Darnell and Merrick Kraus on Bant Spirits and Doomsday, both decks we've seen today. And then on the other side, Abzan Greasefang at the hands of Weston Manter. Landon Henderson playing Oops, all spells in Legacy. So that's a lot of Dark Ritual today here. Getting to the match though, let's see. Turn 1, Delta Delta, just the Spider-Man meme standoff, fingers pointing at each other. And I have to imagine one player is certainly going to be surprised.
Yeah, dude, I want to see some fireworks. Like, I want to see double archive trap or something, and well, not technically in response to the fetch land, but after fetch land is resolved. That's one of the ways that the mill deck can produce the biggest amount of mill. And I guess for those who have never seen this in action, like the most common strategy, you reduce your opponent's life total to 0, yeah. But what Mill is saying is like, you know what, we're kind of like a burn spell, but instead of burning your life total, we're burning the cards in your library, and the cards really allow you to do that, because even though like the comparison with burn always comes up, the big problem with Mill is that you can't convert those into just like sometimes killing creatures to buy more time, to draw more cards. But this Mill deck playing a bunch of removal spells. We see 4 Drown in the Log, 4 Fatal Push, and that's going to be a way to try and keep Blue-Red Murktide in check. I'm not sure what the matchup is like. Technically, from the aggro player side, you ignore most of the mill cards and just get in there for the damage and only start countering mill cards once they threaten your life total. But we'll see if that's how it's going to work out, because the longer Izzet Murktide is not going to present a threat, and right now we didn't see a turn 1 threat, so I would very much assume there's either going to be a Ledger Shredder, okay,
All right.
or we're sitting on a very reactive draw. You would
Right.
love to keep the crabs, of course, but yeah, this is where it comes down. This is the best mill spell in the format, Archive Trap, 13 cards, gun off your deck.
All right. Well, turn 1, Ruin Crab going to get hit by a lightning bolt here. We see Mishra's Bauble on turn 1 from Zane Martin here. That draws what I think was a Ragavan. And now let's see the damage here. Archive Trap going to be cast for 0 mana thanks to the fetch land. Polluted Delta searching up the Steam Vents. And that's a doozy. one lightning bolt, one unholy heat, two lightning bolts now, making four removal spells in the graveyard. We see a copy of Spell Pierce, Iteration, Ledger Shredder, and this is great because now we know what we're playing against and we know how to proceed in the next few turns. Wait, I say this is great, but is that a Murktide Regent in the hand?
Oh, that's gonna that's the one thing you don't want to play against, right? If you're playing a mill deck and you get that archive trap up and your opponent's like, sweet, I'm just gonna make like this turn 1/7/7.
You know what's worse than one
Or
Murktide
8/8
Regent,
even.
Julian? Two of them!
Oh, this is the most busted kind of start you and they even talk about, right? Oh, we didn't have a turn 1 creature. Yeah, guess what? We have turn 2 like the giant dragon, and turn 3 it's gonna be all that much better. 1/3 of Zane's deck is already gone, but we've pumped like almost all of it into having like 2 big dragons. And Dimir
Jeez.
Mill, how does Dimir deal with this? Is this gonna be, I guess, help me out here. Drown the Lock. Yeah, I guess Drown the Lock.
Drown in the Lock is basically the only answer, which is a little bit tricky as far as I can tell. In the main deck, there's also a copy of Odawara, Soaring City, which you can use to bounce. And I think that is it. The other removal spell will target cheaper creatures. So this is definitely not where you want to be if you're in the mill side of things, facing down a 5/5, sorry, an 8/8 Regent. And I could just imagine, just like Zane going back home, opening the door and parent going like, "Hey, honey, how was your tournament today?" "Oh, just casually had 20 points of power in the air, on turn 4." And like, "Oh, well, good for you," like kind of crazy. And so now the
But I
game is
had
going to
this
get
trap, maybe. Yeah, I guess this is just like pretty straightforward, right? You cast your second dragon, you get your first dragon that's gonna be like 13 power. Are we literally attacking for 13 on the third turn? Like this would completely wreck a ton of legacy decks even.
yeah. Oh no, not just a couple, a lot of legacy decks. Yeah. So you can see here 5 cards going into exile, 4 instants and sorceries. That's gonna pump that's gonna put a 7/7 Murktide into play. But thanks to the second ability, Murktide Regent works really well with, you guessed it, more Murktide Regents. So that's 4 extra counters going on the first Murktide Regent, which means we're attacking for not 8 this turn, but 12. That's brutal. Opponent going down to 5 now.
Zane is just sitting here like, oh, sweet, can you help me? You got more of those archive traps, please? Daniel cycling one of those Visions of Beyond, potentially Ancestor Recall if there's enough cards in the graveyard. Not right now. We're gonna mill some more cards. We have everything. This is a really good protection. Shout out to the production team. I think we don't have a library counter yet. I was trying to keep up with it, but I think Zane is gonna close out this game before it actually becomes relevant. But here, oh, that's the what's it
Fractured
called?
Sanity.
Yeah, exactly. That's gonna mill for something like when you cycle it, it mills for 4, but if you hardcast it, it mills for 14. Looks like this is gonna be a hit for 14.
Yeah.
So at some point we were, when I was still keeping track, we were at 37, then like draw a card 36. Now we hit 14 cards, so it's like 22 or something. Then there was a mill of the crab, so it would be like 19 cards left. But yeah, just not enough. Just not
Yeah.
enough. Even if you had a second Mindbreak Trap, we might have Mindbreak Trap, Archive Trap, maybe might have been able to get there. But yeah, this is
I just feel like this is like the narrator's view where it's just like, and suddenly at this moment he knew, you know what I mean, like that kind of deal, or it's like this is not like, yeah, I'm facing a Murktide Regent. Hi, my name's Daniel. You might be wondering how I got into this situation here. We're gonna dive right into Legacy. We have Landon Henderson up a game playing Oops All Spells, which we got to see a little bit earlier against Doomsday, piloted by Brandon Darnell. And we've seen both of these decks. Can you give me a quick refresher about both of these decks really quickly as we see Thoughtseize in play here from the Oops All Spells side?
Yeah, at the very core, both decks kind of end up doing the same. They both get rid of their libraries and win with Thassa's Oracle. Doomsday does it in a very much more straightforward way, at the stipulation of not being able to play any lands in their deck, and they need to resolve one of their 3 or 4 drops. Whereas
I'm
Doomsday,
sorry. I have to stop you here. This Thoughtseize may be like one of the worst Thoughtseizes like of all time to see. Like, okay, so yeah, you're basically mentioning that these are both combo decks, but Doomsday does have a controlling element to it. So imagine my face when you go Thoughtseize, you see not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 forces, and just to go a little bit, just to kick a little bit harder, there's a Daze there as well.
Yeah, but the thing is, Doomsday doesn't even care about all that much about the Force of Negations, right? That's the beauty of it. You get to discard all of them with the Decapit Therapy if you mill your entire deck, and then you just get there with the Dread Return, which then can't be countered. Like really, the one card that you care about is the Daze. And if the Daze protects the Force of Negations and you get to hit the Dread Return, then you really get to make life hell for Oops. On the other hand, though, and I know that's like going into a ton of detail, Oops also has a mode where it just like plays Memory Journey to stay alive, and then casts a Natural Thassa's Oracle, which once again cannot be touched by the Force of Negation. But that, of course, relies on the Memory Journey resolving. So it's not looking great for Doomsday. As I say that, I see a Pact of Negation in hand that could counter the sorry, I thought that was like a potato, but actually it looks like Landon has cut his finger and has some bandages on that. So the Force of Negation might actually counter the Daze even, if necessary. This is a really spicy spot for Doomsday, and I actually, now that I think about it more, I actually kind of hate this position for Doomsday. Like seems to be like a really bad position for Doomsday. My money is on Landon here, like if I had to guess.
Okay, I mean, this could be pretty tricky here. Dark Ritual is going to be the first card cast this turn here. Does this card resolve? If you're in this situation, Julian, are you going to cast a Force Negation on a Dark Ritual?
I think you have to. Because you know that you won't be able to interact with like the 8 payoff spells like Undercity Informer and Barrister Spy. Yeah, that's smart. That's smart. And you gotta buy time. Brandon is very far from ever winning the game. Like, it's not, if you're playing the combo mirror and both players have counter spells, if you're literally just sitting on counter spells, that's really not all that great, because traditionally in Legacy, counter spells they 2-for-1 yourself, especially the quicker ones. And you will need to draw at least Doomsday and mana to cast it. And right now, Brandon is at least 2 cards away from that, assuming Dark Ritual is going to be involved. If you're not drawing Dark Ritual, it's going to be even more cards.
So this is pretty interesting here, as looks like we have 3 mana. We have the 4th from the Simian Spirit Guide. Now, the issue is that we know about the Daze, right? And Landon knows about the Daze. So the real question is how do we choose to proceed
to play
through it?
The beauty is we can pay for the Undercity Informer without using the Pact of Negation by just using our Simian Spirit Guide, and then we pass the turn. Because unlike Balustrade Spy, Undercity Informer is 1 mana cheaper, and then requires 1 mana to activate. So that's how we could get a discount. But yeah, looks like Brandon actually drew Force of Will, which is gonna give him a lot more time, because now I think Landon is out of enablers, but there's gonna be 7 others left in the deck. And from Landon's side of the board, the game is pretty straightforward here. You just try to draw one of your enablers, and that's why we love Legacy at times. There's even a world where you try to get like one of your Simian Spirit Guides into play if you can ever obtain some more red mana, because Doomsday, they need their life total to work with, and very often they need to pass after casting Doomsday. So if Landon was actually able to cast one of his creatures here, I think he would actually do it.
Well, speak of the devil, Memory's Journey is the draw for the turn here, and that is not very good in the sense of furthering this plan here of casting our Balustrade Spy through potential counter magic here and there. Now, keep in mind, but there's a lot of known information. Brandon knows about the Balustrade Spy. Landon knows about the Force of Negation on the other side. The question is when do we pull the trigger on actionable items? Right? Do we play this Balustrade Spy this turn? We don't have a 5th mana. We have 3 mana in play, and then the Simian Spirit Guide in the hand to cast the Balustrade Spy. But if there's another Daze, if there's another Force of Will, this is our last threat. And you can see Landon is struggling here. This is tough, because maybe this is one of the tensions of playing Oops All Spells, is that it is very all or nothing. If you get this spell countered, you're in a lot of trouble. You can't really rely on the consistency of your deck to draw into further things. You can see now, all right, pulling the trigger, here it is, Balustrade Spy, it's go time.
So if I was Landon, I would be like, I would consider like not even using the Pact of Negation to defend myself. On the other hand, of course, if Brandon interacts, that leaves him with almost no cards in hand. So you probably just like go for it. But it looks like Brandon doesn't even have anything. So now we're just gonna go through the entire deck. Necromovers are gonna come into play. We already used a Cable Therapy. So if Brandon actually happens to have another Force of Negation plus Pitch, then If Brandon has that, then he will be able to counter the inevitable dread return that's gonna come into play here. But funny enough, like Landon has the memories journey in hand, so Brandon doesn't even know about. By the way, the names are way too similar. I hope the audience can
Yeah.
still follow me. So Landon on the left side can buy some extra turns by using memories journey. And Brandon's not aware of that. But it looks like Brandon didn't have anything. Dude, I would have loved to see how this game played out if Landon was actually forced to go down the memories journey road. But we might see more of that. Actually, no, we don't, because Landon takes the entire game.
All right, well, let's dive back into Modern here as we're getting ready for game number 2 here. As a refresher, Zane Martin up a game. Izzet Murktide against Dimir Mill at the hands of Daniel Wharton. And that was a pretty exciting game 1. As a recap, it was a turn 1 archive trap for the Mill side, which turned on, you guessed it, a turn 2 Murktide region into a turn 3 Murktide region. And that game was over in a blink of an eye, much faster than most modern games go. And we're going to see here Polluted Delta in play. That's going to be responded to, I guess, in air quotes. You get what I'm saying, with a Ragavan from the side of Izzet Murktide.
Yeah, interestingly, after sideboarding, I would very much assume that Dimir Mill is going to bring in 2 copies of Ensnaring Bridge. That's just like one of the ways that you can have some counterplay against early dragons. Technically, if you get like a big mill off and you hit a Murktide Regent, you could even proactively surgical extract or extirpate it if extirpate actually came in. I don't feel like this might necessarily be the matchup where you want a card like surgical extraction in the first place, but I could be wrong. Like if the matchup actually works out that way, that you're pretty well equipped against anything except for a Murktide, then you might keep in the surgical extraction. But we will see as the game develops, because right now we're just like trading off a kind of removal spell here. Fatal Push on Ragavan. And back to Zane here.
All right, yeah. So we'll see a couple draws here. Odawara, Brazen Borrower, the pickups, and this is really interesting. I'm going to ask you a very complicated question as we see Dragon's Rage Channel come into play here. You ready for my question?
Yeah, always.
It's a question as old as, okay, not as old as time, but who's the beatdown, baby?
Oh,
yeah, that's why I asked it, because I knew it'd make you think.
I think it's maybe slightly beats Zane, because if the game goes really long, then the crabs are just gonna be so good. The crabs are eventually just like the backbone of any kind of game, usually against control. But if the game goes really long and Zane thinks that he is the control deck, and in turn ascribes the control, the aggro roll, the beatdown roll to Daniel, then Daniel will eventually like get him with the crabs. But Zane might be aware of that and just like play a slightly more aggressive game, and try to win that way. Like the entire matchup, but like it feels like it's pretty good for Blue Red Delver or Blue Red Murktide, not only because of Murktide, but also because your removal spells and like Lightning Bolt also are able to take out your opponent's engines and the crabs or close out the game quicker. So a lot of good cards on the Murktide side, and Dimir Mill, I would imagine them to struggle a little bit in this matchup. Also, as we see Dragon Rage Channel coming in, I'm not sure if it's already on Ultimate, is it? Where we're going to see as the life totals change.
I like that reference. Delirium, Dragon's Rage Channeler, has basically ulted. So we see an end of turn Fractured Sanity here. That's going to cycle to draw a card, but then also mill 4, as looks like both players are patiently playing Drago. You can see it on the screen there. The primary mode, blue, blue, blue to mill 14. But the more common mode, I think, is just cycling 1 in a blue, dig through your deck while also making a little bit of progress through your primary game plan. And yep, land's just going to come into play. Both players comfortable playing Drago with the pacing of damage. I think there may have been or do we have any removal spells in the hand here for the Izzet Murktide side? Sorry, removal spells for the Dimir Mill side. I apologize.
We might. I was gonna more think about whether Daniel could find a bridge, but Zane had the answer for bridge in Brazen Burrow, but decides to play it out. And that also kind of answers your question, right? And who's the beatdown? At least in the way this game plays out and the way these hands have been drawn, I think Zane considers himself the beatdown, because the end of turn Brazen Burrow definitely says, hey, I want to beat you down as quickly as I can, as opposed to like holding it back for a potential ensnaring bridge.
Okay. We're gonna see Drown in the Lock here counter the Brazen Bar that was flashed on the end step, and I like this a lot. It shows like resource allocation, aligning your answers to the appropriate threats. Fatal Push being a big element in this matchup. Speaking of big elements in this matchup, here's a really big one. Murktide Regent going to come down here. Oh, but we're only making it into a.
But usually when you make your first one really small, that means you have a second one in hand. So you
Okay.
get both to reap the benefits of it.
All right. Well, that's a good heads up here. Okay, never mind. I think we might be maxing out. So that's 3 instants and sorceries, 2 lands. Thank you for the clarity, Zane. Much appreciated. And that's going to put a 6/6 into play here. And now that the Drown in the Lock is gone. Okay, wait a minute. We've got a stack here. Mystical Dispute targeting the Murktide Regent, and then Flusterstorm with the Dragon's Rage Channeler Surveil trigger on the stack is going to clear the way for the dragon to enter play. And I believe Daniel's down to 1 card now.
Surveil is another interesting one, because technically if you surveil and you put it into a graveyard, that's just like a free mill one for the opponent.
Oh yeah, right?
I'm trying to keep track of how many cards are left in Zane's library. Very roughly, there should be something like 44 cards still left in the library. And yeah, Daniel just gets to draw 1 more card and just like scoops it up. No relevant cards in hand. And that's the match for Team Manter, Martin, and Henderson.
All right, yeah. In pretty convincing fashion here, the Izzet Murktide deck going to take care of Dimir Mill 2-0. Similarly, Landon, Henderson 2-0. Oops, all spells taking the win against Doomsday, which we got to watch as well. Pretty cool stuff here. It looks like we're going to try to get an interview going on fairly shortly to talk about the players and their experiences there. Keep in mind, if you are all here for the first time ever, or if you've been here before, if you enjoy the content, listen, you want to show your support. You want to say thank you to Norm and the brilliant crew here at the NRG series. You want to support paper coverage. If this is what you are all about, hit that follow button. Let Norm know that you appreciate this content so that he knows, that you like what he's watching. He'll put more of it out there for you. If you like the player interviews, if you like my beautiful face, okay, hold up. Wait a minute. This is not a selling point. Okay. If you like Julian's beautiful face, hit that follow button again. And if you're really feeling it, consider subscribing as well with maybe Amazon Prime. That's free. That's pretty cool here. Looks like players are getting seated. So we're going to hop into the interview booth in just a second to find out a little bit more about the experience that these players had. I'm pretty excited. Julian, what's your first question? Actually, you know what? Don't even tell me. You're going to ask the players. I'm ready for it. But we got a lot of cool stuff coming on. A lot of events in the horizon. So, NRG being one of the, company stores, entities with coverage at the forefront. This is what we want in 2022. So thank you so much to the crew. If the players are ready, we are too. All right, looks like I'm getting a note that'll take just a second here, so no worries there. But yeah, I'm pretty excited. So as a quick refresher, we had Izzet Murktide in the modern seat, and then we had Oops All Spells in the legacy seat. And I actually have already forgotten what was in the pioneer seat, but that's okay because we can find that out really fast. Let's cut it to the interview desk. And hello, Landon, Weston, how's it going?
It's going well. Going well today.
All right, yeah, you two are sitting at a comfy, cozy 3-0, and that's a good place to be in at every event.
Yes.
Awesome. So let's start by addressing the dragon in the room here, playing against Mill, that Archive Trap on turn 2. I wasn't really sure how that game was good because Archive Trap is a great start for Mill. Whenever you can, cinch that value for 0 mana, you're always happy. But plot twist, there was an 8/8 dragon on turn 2. Tell me about that.
Well, I looked over and my teammate was like, I'm going to slam. So we slammed the Murktide in, and the second one was good enough to cross the finish line.
Yeah, that is pretty incredible here. I also noticed there's like a weird timing. I don't know if your teammate mentioned this to you, but the what is it called? There was the second Murktide Regent that came down. If it had been milled 1 card sooner, then a Surgical Extraction could have handled both copies, and that would have been a super tight game. I know, like bird's eye vision. I'm telling you right now, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, he did not mention that.
Yeah,
no, good. So Anurag and I were actually wondering, as we were thinking about the matchup, do you think there's like a clear beatdown? Is anybody supposed to play the control role, or do you just like have to switch depending on what the cards give you? We noticed that at one point you wanted to flash in an end of turn Brazen Borrower, right? Which otherwise would be the answer to Ensnaring Bridge. So I was wondering whether you felt like, hey, I am the beatdown in this matchup and I'm going to try to kill you as quickly as possible.
I think that in that matchup that he just doesn't have the time to sit and wait and be the control deck, because he has to aggro them out before and just hope that they don't have it. I believe he boarded in his one of a braid. So if he had that was his out to it, and he has an Ottawara in his deck. And so I think it was better for him to just use those two that he doesn't have as the interactive pieces and try to just push for the finish line before his opponent draws the Ensnaring Bridge.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting. So Landon, let me ask you a question here. Let's transition to Legacy, and then we'll follow up with Pioneer in just a second. As I am very curious. That match you played against Doomsday was pretty intense, honestly. I'm not gonna lie. We we walked in at a very awkward moment where you were resolving a Thoughtseize that showed like force days and then triple force and negation. What was your thought? What was your reaction?
It was pretty appalling to see he drew all the interaction. Luckily, he didn't really have anything else going on, so I had plenty of time to work my way through it all.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's a really interesting concept. So like in the battle of combo versus control, I've always found that, like, when people talk about like Storm and Legacy, for example, and I don't know if you have experience with other Dark Ritual decks, but the idea of like you're okay like taking your time a little bit because you will eventually be able to break out of any sort of situation because you'll draw your Thoughtseizes, and like you drew your Pact of Negation and things like that.
Totally.
It's kind of interesting. Like, what was so obviously the first thing is like, you kept pretty cool there looking at 5 counters in the hand. What was your strategy for breaking through all those cards?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first strategy was luck and hope. He never had any threat. He never cast a Doomsday. So I had infinite time until he got a Doomsday and his lands together. So, I mean, calm, cool, collected, make as many land drops as I can. And I ended up drawing a second spy effect. I drew Undercity Informer, and he had to counter that one. And then I was free to pact the final turn when I went for Value Shade Spy. I would have lost if he drew a blue card because he had Days Force of Negation X Unknown. But wow. I figured it was a good time to go before anything else.
Okay. Yeah. No, because it's not gonna get too much better. I mean, like you found the sweet spot, and I could tell too, like in the moment, like your hand was in your head. You were thinking like, all right, well, what do I do in this situation? And I think that's pretty wise, right? Just like saying like, all right, this is the best window to go off of after this percentage point start dropping. So very wise for that. In that sense too. So let's pivot really over to Pioneer now. So Weston, let me ask you. We didn't actually get to watch too much of your match. Your teammates were too busy winning. They won too fast. Good spot to be in. How'd your match go?
So I missed lethal game 1 because I was playing Greasefang and I put a Parhelion into play, and in response, he tapped my Greasefang with the Shacklegeist, but I had 3 other creatures in play that could crew the Parhelion, and I just did my math wrong, and he was at 14, and I could have attacked for 14, but I left 1 creature back to block. So my opponent misplayed, I misplayed, he won the game, and then game 2, he just kind of ran me over. He drew 2 Spell Quellers and a Collected Company, but I had won the first 2 rounds of the day, so it was time for my teammates to pick up the slack.
Awesome. There you go. Yeah, I always do that. I always do that where like I keep track of like whose records are there, because like, well, here's the thing, right? Like for team events, I always feel like you play with your friends, you play with Magic players you trust, but also the players you can have a good time with.
Of course,
definitely part of that is just like at the end of the day comparing records and be like, well, I really did just carry you here, so you get to hold that. You get a couple rounds off. I totally understand that.
Of course.
Oh yeah, currently Landon's carrying the team. He's currently 3-0. I am 2-1, and Zane, our modern seat, is 1-0 because he didn't finish his other 2 rounds.
That's a hard one to evaluate. Okay, all right, yeah.
Upsal Spell's doing really well. We were talking to another team, I think 2 rounds ago, and one of the players actually wanted to play Upsal Spells, but the other 2 players prevented her from doing it. They were like, you cannot do that in this event. And we were wondering whether that's like something that came up with your teammates, or is it just...
we all sorry to interrupt. We all locked in very last minute. I was very happy to lock in Oops All Spells. I was either going to play Doomsday or Elves today. But I ended up I had a knife accident and I cut my finger. So Oops All Spells required the least amount of shuffling. So I'm glad we went with that one.
Sorry about the accident, but
it's all
that's
right.
a great story. If you win the entire thing, make sure to put the thing on camera.
I will. Right there.
Yeah, it's
This is
funny
what carried
'cause
me.
people talk about like variance and like what variance actually means in Magic, and I'm gonna chalk this one up to variance, where like totally couldn't control this knife, and then like now I'm playing Oops All Spell, so you know if we win, scoreboard, but also
Exactly.
what? Yeah. Anyways, all right, you two, thank you so much. One
course.
last question is, how are you guys feeling about the next few rounds? What is your strategy for closing out? Because there are 4 more rounds of Swiss left. Attitudes going forward. Where are you at?
Feeling good. Hoping to keep drawing hot. I've been drawing pretty well all day against the Force Will decks, so that's what I'm here to do.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we just need to take our time, slow down a little bit, count all the math out before we attack.
Learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we're going to thank you so much for the interview. The team Henderson, Manter, and Martin advance on to 3-0 in the NRG series here, the team event at Fort Wayne. Much appreciated. And yeah, I think that's pretty cool. That is something that we haven't really addressed. Like every time we come back to the booth, I always find myself talking about like why team events are so great. And the reality is that there's just so much to say. I mean, it's not the most common form of Magic, but like when you do get to play with your teams, it's pretty great. And I think that's one of the things that I really do like too, which is like sometimes you lose, but you just get carried, right? Like you can see here, like, okay, I made a mistake here with combat, but this is what I got you for, Julian. You got Crater Hoof Behemoth, and you're carrying me to the finals, baby.
You want me to tell you something about team events?
Yes.
So I was actually invited to go to Kenya for a month, and I don't want to go too deep into it, but my work actually told me, Julian, you need to go to Kenya, to our hotel, go on safari. I mean, yes, for work, but after work, you're going to be in Kenya on the beach. It's going to be amazing. And I literally come back a little bit earlier to play a team event, but in the beginning of December.
Oh, that's awesome. That is super awesome. Who are your teammates?
I'm teaming with Callum Smith and Kai Savatari, both of my co-hosts on the Everyday Eternal podcast. We're going to be playing at the Four Seasons in Bologna. There's going to be a big European Legacy Championship. And as part of that, it's actually technically the main event of another event. Anyway, it goes way too deep, but we decided to team up as Team Everyday Eternal, or we're going to pick a good name. And yeah, I'm going to be in the modern slot. Kai is going to play the vintage slot, and Callum is probably going to play Painter. Callum, are you in chat? Let me know. I'm probably going to play Painter on the legacy slot. And I really wanted to play that. So I picked actually my flights to arrive back in time to play that event.
Very, very awesome. Well, I'm going to get an update from the production on how much time we have left in between rounds. If not, I have some special content for you all in the booth here. Let's see. Hold up. It's on the screen and I can't see it. I'm sorry, Norm. Don't fire me. All right. We have a couple pieces of important information to go over, right? I mentioned already the NRG series is not just a one and done sort of shop here in Fort Wayne. Let's take a look at some of the upcoming events here. And yeah, welcome back to the booth. If you're just joining us, my name is Anurag Das. I'm joined by Julian Knab. We are here at the NRG series event in Fort Worth. And wow, I feel like I just need to take a
you've been
deep
running
breath.
like a 100-meter dash or
Oh,
like
yeah.
5,000
It's
meter
great.
dash.
Yeah, it's cool. We're going to slow down now, and we're going to talk a little bit. So we have a couple more minutes before the round begins, and we did talk about some cards in our upcoming set for Magic the Gathering, the Brothers War. So we've talked about a few cards. We talked about Lorn of the Third Path. We talked about Brotherhood's End, and we talked about Titania, the voice of Gaia. Anything else that strikes you as interesting, Julian?
But I guess one of the most talked about cards and might become a fan favorite is the Stone Brain. I want to say this has generated a lot of talk. The kind of effect, I guess we can like put it on screen in a moment. This kind of effect used to exist in Magic for a while. And for those who don't know, oh yeah, there we have it. So it's a 2-mana artifact. You can tap 2, exile it, and you get, I guess it's basically a cranial extraction effect where you search the entire opponent's deck for any card. I think this one can also remove basic lands, right? So yeah, you name any card. And if they happen to have any of those cards in hand, they get replaced by an extra draw. So this is not creating card advantage for you. This is a strategic tool that you can usually use to attack combo decks. Technically, like I mentioned, one of the few effects that can actually hit basic lands as well. Legacy, I think the most talked about type of deck is a Karn Stompy deck, right? Because this also has like the nice effect of you can grab it from the sideboard with Karn, and then since this exiles itself, you can grab it again with Karn and then use it again. I'm not sure whether you would put this card into your deck to use it twice, because when you want an effect like that, you better win the game with it, because it's you're basically paying 4 mana to go down on card advantage -1, at least. I don't know, man. Is this something that scares you? You've been known to play control decks with like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 win conditions at best.
I feel personally outed here, but yeah, no, you bring up really good points here. I think in the format of Legacy specifically, evaluating this intense of a mana cost. Generally speaking, when you say 4 mana, it has to rhyme with you win the game. So back in the day, it was Jason the Mind Sculptor. Nowadays, you'll see like Karn the Great Creator, or you'll see things like Shieldred, cards that are just like lights out in certain matchups, not every matchup. Even like Minsk and Boo is a card that barely makes the cusp because it's just so good. The Stone Brain is interesting. I like that you can tutor it off of Karn, for example. There must be other applications that we will learn about surely soon enough, but there's overall, I would say this is like a solid, like, oh man, I'd give it like a 6 out of 10.
that's good.
I think it's going to be a little bit better, let's say like in Modern, for example, where there's a lot more competition around that slot. So for example, you'll see like Yawgmoth plays cards like Necromentia, right? You have Lost Legacy as another playable option. Or Unmoored Ego, that's another good one as well, right? So this is where this card comes into play, because being able to go turn 2 Stone Brain, untap, activate, have 1 mana over is kind of a big deal. But also, like, if your curve doesn't like really suit it, then maybe you just want that 3 mana Unmoored Ego kind of deal. I think the biggest thing about it is like the artifact typing, and that you can tutor it with Karn the Great Creator.
Yeah, something I would have loved to seen is being able to activate this at instant speed, which would have also technically made it graveyard hate. As you can, your opponent's going for Grizzlebrand, you remove it from the graveyard or something. I mean, you can still do that proactively, but you don't always have that option if your opponent's going to do the entire combo. So that would have made me put it as like a 6 or 6.5 out of 10 in Legacy. Interestingly, and I could be wrong on this, I've seen people mention this as a win condition for mono green in Pioneer. Because you can also, like, if once you get to the point where you activate your planeswalkers left and right, I guess you could eventually remove all the win conditions from your opponent's deck and then just like pass the turn, or even like take out the lands if you have the mana. And
wow, yeah. That is kind of terrifying to think about. I mean, like, yes, you do have the ability to draw a card in case you lose something from your hand. So that's just been the general pattern for these sort of like slaughter games effects. Or cranial extraction. I don't know, whatever extraction effects. We'll just call it that. Sure. But yeah, the ability to like loop it multiple times over with something like Karn, if you're doing your restorative burst sort of deal, down tick twice, even like 2 activations would be enough to really stymie like any sort of super scary, like, let me put it this way, rather, let's say you're playing like mono green, for example, right? And you've developed your board in a very certain way, and you just know for a fact that like those Arclight Phoenixes that are going to come into play next turn, big problem. Now you have 6 mana, you can play like 2 Old Growth Trolls or something like that, or hey, check it out. Well, okay, actually you probably need like 8 mana, but like you can down tip with Karn and then play the Stone Brain to just remove that threat for the rest of the game. You get to pick and choose what you want to play around, and that versatility has always been powerful. I think the upside is the accessibility. That is what makes this card especially powerful.
Yeah, I wonder whether we're actually going to see it. I usually don't really love these kind of effects unless they're like slaughter games where they're guaranteed to resolve. So you get to it used to be a way for non-blue decks to have to almost force the other deck that would otherwise outgrind you into a beatdown role, because all of a sudden you had slaughter games, and slaughter games literally could not be countered, and your opponent had to kill you before slaughter games came online.
Right.
This one can be countered, so it doesn't have that reversal effect of rolls in a matchup, but it's still, since it's just like so easy to cast, right, compared to slaughter games, it's just like 4 mana straight up with 2 colored requirements. This is like 2 and 2, which makes it just like so much easier.
Yeah.
I'm on record on Twitter or wherever saying that this won't see play, but I could be wrong, and it's certainly playable, I would guess, in Modern and Pioneer.
I like being wrong about playable cards because there's a lot to learn from that sort of thing. You know, like Fable of the Mirror Breaker was one of the cards that the majority of the community would like went under the radar, and you can see today that it's like a very powerful card in all formats, Legacy, Modern, and also Pioneer as well. And so, yeah, this is the kind of evaluation that like you have us both on record saying that we're like not too hyped about the Stone Brain, in at least like Legacy. I think in Modern and especially in Pioneer, you'll see the card dial up, show up a little bit more. It does give like the red decks, the non-black decks, access to some sort of like playable extraction effect. We'll see if it's actually pretty good. I do want to transition to something pretty cool here. So, okay, so this is really interesting. It's November 5th. I believe all the cards from the Brothers War have been spoiled. Chat, if you're here and you can confirm that, please let me know. But Wizards of the Coast was super kind and awesome enough to send me over a little bit of promo material that I kind of wanted to show off today to you all, and just to get a first like hands-on feel and look for the Brothers War here. So we were just talking about the Stone Brain. You'll see I'm leaning forward because bang, here's a copy of it. And what I would like to do actually is adjust my camera so you don't actually have to look at like peanut
Don't show your
quality.
eyes. It will always focus your eyes.
Oh yeah. That's right. Right. Just like where's that 2020 vision, right? So this is pretty cool here. This is the Stone Brain, and you can see. I mean, it's just another card, but there are a lot of other cool cards to talk about that I wanted to go through that have all been. Okay, so the full set is out. So that okay, Wizards was like November 5th, everything is going to be out. So I want to go through a couple other cards. Maybe we won't get to all of them. I do need to leave some cards to discuss for Mason and Devin. So you know, here let's just pan through it. So this is another really exciting card. Hold up. OBS. Okay, perfect. All right. Yeah, so I'll just do this instead. A different type of content, but here's Haywire Might. This is a pretty powerful card that we'll talk about at some point. Here is another shiny foil Mishra's Research Desk, which is also another powerful card. You'll notice that both of these have something in common. And then here's another card that I think Julian, you and I can talk about right now, which is Third Path Iconoclast. Let's get into it. Julian, how do you feel about this card?
Well, it's basically Young Pyromancer that pitches to Farcical, right? Which makes it really good. I think it also triggers on artifacts, which the original, if I remember correctly, doesn't trigger on. So it could be an upgrade. Of course, it's a little bit harder to cast.
Yeah.
We're not really living in Young Pyromancer's world right now, right? We've had years where Young Pyromancer was just like the big deal. Usually, I'm sorry, Young Pyromancer, but you're usually good when something is really broken in the format. That's just the code first.
Whoa, wait a minute. Do you remember? Oh, I was gonna say, do you remember the Grand Prix that BBD won? That also had Young Pyromancer, but then I also remember Treasure Cruise and
Treasure Cruise and yeah.
And Stoneforge Mystic, very broken. Stoneforge Mystic. Right? No, I'm kidding. Let's see if we can get third path Iconoclast on the screen. Oh, I love our production. Hey, seriously, I'm gonna shill just one more time. Please hit the follow button if you like the quality. If this is a high quality broadcast, I know we've got about 550 people here. That means we're all enjoying having a good time. Hit the follow button. Show some love to the NRG series. Third Path Iconoclast. When you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token for blue and a red, and it's a 2/1. It's a human monk. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool card.
The question arises: Is it going to be worth it? Like mana wise, it doesn't really make any kind of difference, right? It might as well just be like one in the red. The only difference in these kind of decks is like maybe sometimes Wasteland is present. So it's gonna be as easy to cast. It has the better flavor text, and I say that without even knowing what Young Pyromancer's flavor text is, if it has any in the first place. And yeah, dude. I want to say I'm just not feeling it, but that's more like Legacy isn't really like playing these kinds of effects right now. I think you.
Let me start by asking the most important question. All right, is first of all, do you think Young Pyromancer has been power crept out of Legacy now that this card exists? There are very clear upsides and downsides to both cards, and I'm getting bored, by the way, that time was called in the round, so the next round will be starting pretty soon. So appreciate your patience with that. But yeah,
Young Pyromancer, first of all, can't be Pyroblasted, right? That's just like in Legacy, that's one of those things. Sometimes you just like get these downs. I remember particularly in Omnitel dig through time mirrors and stuff like that. People sometimes had Pyromancer while the other opponent was sitting behind like all the Pyroblasts in the world, and they literally couldn't do anything. And then you get Pyromancer down. This one gets Pyroblasted easily. But overall, actually, what's the creature type? Soldier, we can't really do much. Oh, Soldier Artifact. Artifacts die a little bit easier than other stuff. So I would say if I was to build a young Pyromancer deck, I would start with this guy. First of all, because it overall looks to be the better card, but second of all, also because I just want to experience whether it actually is. Like sometimes I would even play like a worse card than what I think is the better card if I have less experience with the worst card. Whereas here, I think this might actually be the slightly better card. But Pyromancer, I'm not even sure how far the it dies to Pyroblast argument goes, considering that the entire deck is just like so full with stuff that wants to Pyroblast, like Expressive Iteration, Murktide, even like Leisure Shredder to a degree if you play it. So maybe that's not even all that much of an argument. Like if this trades with your opponent's Pyroblast, then your Murktide or your Expressive Iteration resolves. So how do you feel about this card, man?
I think it's great. I'm looking forward to playing it. I think the upside of being able to pitch to something like Force of Will, kind of nice, even though it does get Pyroblasted. Like you mentioned, a lot of oversaturation. But what I'm more interested in is, well, a synergy that we could expect to see both in Modern and Legacy, and that is artifacts, 0 mana artifacts, Mishra's Bauble to be more specific. The fact that you can go third path Iconoclast on turn 2 and then play Mishra's Bauble immediately to make a 1/1, sort of like spread your board a little bit, doesn't mean that it's like, insanely good. But I do think that interaction is nothing to laugh at. And I think especially in Legacy, right? Like what if, this stems a new archetype entirely, like maybe like 8 cast where you make a lot of artifacts and you can cast really cheap thought monitors and thought casts and things like that. So
Okay, you got me on the upside of artifacts. I was actually thinking about the downside of artifacts, which like are more fragile. But of course, in Legacy we have a lot of upsides to it as well. And like you mentioned, if you play Mishra's Bauble in the traditional blue-red diver deck, then this makes a creature. That's true. And maybe, but that's probably reaching too far. There's even a world where we have something like, help me out, what's Blastoise again? The
Kappa
big
Cannoneer.
dude, Kappa Cannoneer. I mean, these tokens, do they pay for Kappa Cannoneer? I'm pretty sure they do, right? The
You
artifacts.
can, improvise will tap artifacts, so like Lotus Petal as well as these tokens. So that's actually a really powerful interaction as well. All right, we are going to go ahead and take a quick break here as we get into round 4. Thank you so much, everybody who is watching. Don't forget the follow button. We'll be back in about 2, 3, 4 minutes or so. So don't go anywhere. Or actually, that's a lie. Go refill your popcorn buckets. It's time. We're gonna have a sweet match here as the 3-0s battle out to see who gets a little bit closer to making that top 8 slot today.